It's safe to say 2020 was pretty wild. Here are just some of the biggest things that happened. The year began with Australia being ravaged by bushfires that affected an area almost the size of England and impacted nearly 3 billion wild animals. On January 3rd, the US military killed Iran's top general, Qasem Soleimani, at the direction of President Donald Trump, in a move that brought the US and Iran to the brink of war. By January 7th, Chinese authorities had identified a novel coronavirus. On January 8th, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle shocked us all by stepping back from their position as senior royals. On January 11th, China recorded its first coronavirus death. On January 20th, the U.S. recorded its first coronavirus case in Washington state. On January 26th, Kobe and Gigi Bryant tragically died in a helicopter crash just outside LA, along with 7 other passengers. On February 5th, the Senate voted to acquit President Trump on 2 articles of impeachment brought by the House. On February 9th, Parasite won 4 Academy Awards. It was the first time a non-English language movie won Best Picture. On March 11th, the WHO declared the coronavirus a pandemic. 5 days.
This Canadian dad spent 30 hours getting a tattoo that looks just like his son's birthmark.
I didn't know that he was going to do that.
Birthmarks are present on people's skin when they're born. They can be a variety of colors from brown to red and can appear in most any place on someone's body. About 3 in every 1,000 people are born with a red birthmark, or port wine stain as they're called. No one knows entirely what causes birthmarks, but they almost never pose any kind of health risk. Though some people with birthmarks can feel insecure about them. But having a dad as awesome as Derek's can help with that.
Days later, on June 1st, Trump oversaw the tear gassing of peaceful protesters outside the White House just so he could hold up a Bible in front of a DC church. On August 4th, a large amount of ammonium nitrate that had been stored for years at the port in Beirut, Lebanon, exploded. The massive blasts left hundreds dead, thousands injured, and hundreds of thousands without homes. On August 11th, Joe Biden named Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate, making her the first black woman and a person of South Asian descent to be selected for a major party's ticket in U.S. history. On August 23rd, a renewed wave of protests broke out in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and many other U.S. cities after the police shooting of Jacob Blake. Professional athletes across the NBA, WNBA, MLB, and other sports leagues went on strike for multiple days in response to the shooting. On August 28th, actor Chadwick Boseman died of cancer at age 43, but his performances in films like Black Panther and Get On Up will live on forever. The same day, tens of thousands attended a new march in Washington, 57 years after the original. On September 18th, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Supreme Court Justice and icon for women's rights, died at age...
I can say in all of these states, far more votes than we need to win every one of them.
The electors have unanimously cast 16 votes for Joseph R. Biden.
I am pleased to announce that Joseph R. Biden has received 16 votes for President of the United States.
The electors of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania have cast 20 votes for the Honorable Joseph R. Biden for President of the United States and 20 votes for the Honorable Kamala D. Harris for Vice President of the United States.
It is my distinct honor to announce that Wisconsin cast its 10 electoral votes for President of the United States of America to Joseph R. Biden, Jr., and for Vice President of the United States of America, 10 electoral votes also for Kamala D. Harris.
Madam Secretary, we have 6 votes for Joseph R. Biden for President and 6 votes for Kamala D. Harris for Vice President.
Plunged 2,997 points in its worst drop since 1987. On April 8th, Senator Bernie Sanders dropped out of the presidential race, making Joe Biden the presumptive Democratic nominee for 2020. On April 9th, New York State had more coronavirus cases than any country in the world. By April 16th, 22 million Americans had filed for unemployment in a single month. As if things weren't bad enough, on May 3rd, murder hornets. May 25th opened the door to months of protests for racial justice across the country. On that day, Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin was filmed kneeling on George Floyd's neck until he died. 3 other officers watched. Protests began the next day in Minneapolis and quickly spread nationwide for weeks to come. All 4 officers were fired and charged in Floyd's death. Meanwhile, on May 27th, COVID-19 deaths passed 100,000 in the U.S. Protests continued across the country throughout the summer. During this period, President Trump made several remarks seemingly threatening violence against his fellow Americans. For instance, on May 29th, Trump called protesters thugs and said, "When the looting starts, the shooting starts."
My grandfather always told me that you can get through about any problem if you actually sit down with somebody and have a beer together. I've been trying to work with people since the first day I got here. I won't ever stop reaching across the aisle or trying to work with one another or sitting down and having a beer and listen to each other. For the betterment of this country, we have to come together. We have to sit down and listen to each other and maybe even have a beer. In the spirit of the bipartisanship and cooperation, I raise this glass to my colleagues, both Democrats and Republicans.
Her seat was later filled by Justice Amy Coney Barrett, a right-wing conservative. Election day came and went on November 3rd without a winner. It took 4 days until November 7th for Joe Biden to be named the projected winner. Trump and his allies spent the next month challenging Biden's legitimate victory in a number of courts. Those legal challenges continue to be resoundingly defeated. On November 18th, the U.S. surpassed 250,000 deaths from COVID-19. However, it seems like hope is finally on the way. On December 11th, the FDA approved the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine for emergency use in the U.S., just days after it began rolling out in the United Kingdom. On December 14th, the same day the vaccine began being distributed nationwide, America crossed the 300,000 threshold for COVID-19 deaths, and there's no telling what 2021 has in store. Okay, that was a mouthful. What moment stood out to you in 2020? Sound off in the comments below.
Vice President-elect Harris and I earned 306 electoral votes, the same number of electoral votes that Donald Trump and Vice President Pence received when they won in 2016. At the time, President Trump called the Electoral College tally a landslide.
We had a landslide, 306 to 223.
Remember, 306 to 223, that's a slaughter. 306 to 223, that's a pretty good shellacking.
By his own standards, these numbers represented a clear victory then, and I respectfully suggest they do so now. In America, politicians don't take power. People grant power to them.
People are talking about defund, right? Everyone's talking about defund. You want to know who's actually voting to defund the police? Republicans. Because Republicans are trying to block state and local funding so that those budgets dry up. Where do they think that these police budgets come from? So if you want to complain about defunding police, go talk to a Republican, first of all. But, I digress. That state and local funding, it goes to teachers, it goes to firefighters, it goes to nurses, and yes, it also does go to police officers in the short term.
Kelly, now that the Electoral College has voted, does the president acknowledge that Joe Biden is the president-elect? Does he have any plans to invite him here to the White House?
The president is still involved in ongoing litigation related to the election. Yesterday's vote was one step in the constitutional process, so I will leave that to him and refer you to the campaign for more on that litigation.
What is his reaction to Leader McConnell today congratulating Joe Biden and calling him the president-elect?
I haven't gotten the president's reaction to that yet, but the president, again, is pursuing ongoing litigation, would refer you to the campaign for further.
And what's the path forward, though, for litigation? If the votes have been certified, if the Electoral College has voted, there doesn't seem to be a legal recourse at this point.
The campaign would have more specifics for you on legal recourse, but yesterday was one step in the constitutional process leading up to the January 20th date in the Constitution.